right, I'd like to call the Village of Cottage Grove Village Board of Trustees meeting to order. It is Monday, November 6th at 6:30 p.m. We are holding this as a hybrid meeting, meaning that we are in the Village Hall as well as on Zoom. There's a Zoom link at the top of the agenda, also audio call-in number as well. With that, we have a quorum. The agenda was properly posted, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to have a moment of silence in memory of firefighter Gavin Wendricks. Item 5 is public appearances. That is public's opportunity to speak on any subject. With that, we just asked for the record that, oh, I thought I heard something. We have crickets again. Public appearances again. Anyone who would like to speak, to just share your name, your address, your municipality, and please hold your comments to no more than 3 minutes in case we have a number of people who would like to speak. With that, I'll pause. Anybody in the room or on Zoom that'd like to speak, please chime in. All right, then next, discuss and consider our meeting minutes from the village board meeting held on October 16th. Any questions, comments, edits, or consideration for motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
And I'll second.
We have a motion and a second then. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Sliding down then to new business. First up there is discuss and consider successor agent for Quick Trip, DBA Quick Trip number 1512. I think this is you, Lisa.
Yep. So we have a new agent for the Quick Trip on, I believe it's Windsor, and the background was completed and was approved.
Any questions from board members?
I'll make a motion to approve the successor agent for Quick Trip, Inc., DBA Quick Trip number 1512.
Is there a second?
Second.
We got a motion second then. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Next, under new business, discuss and consider the approval of permit and fee schedules. Cameron, I think you had a memo in the packet and the fee schedule.
I did, and I will share my screen here. How to do a Zoom update. All right. This was kind of on a short list of things for myself to kind of review. I noticed, just to kind of give some history here, a lot of the fees that we charge are pass-throughs, the biggest one being building inspection fees. Approximately every 4 years, GEC provides us with updated rates. This would be the first time rolling up on the contract that they've done so. As well as, we took that time to look at our kind of fee structures more holistically, making sure we were in line with other communities, in line with the cost to provide these services. So I provided in the packet just a couple schedules. The first one being built-in inspection fees. The second one being more planning and general services. And I apologize. Visuals are always good. So the first one being the development fees. The second one, kind of like I had mentioned, alcohol, more clerk-related fees. I do want to mention most of these fees are driven by state statute. Really, we only have a couple here. And then we also revisited some of our current park rentals. And then, as I had mentioned, the building permit fees as well. So ultimately, after this review, I included what my recommended rates would be, starting effective as of 1/1/2024.
Cameron, quick question.
Certainly.
I just don't know what it is, this one for $10,000, Class B reserve?
I can
I'm going to
explain
pass
one.
that to
Okay.
Lisa.
So back in 1997, the license that a municipality could have was changed by what you had on the books at that time. And so anything, they put a quota on that. So you could have reserve license, which that's what this is. For every 500 population, you get another reserve license. But also the price tag that comes along with that license is 10,000. It was a regulation to number the amount of alcohol Class B license that a municipality could have. So that is set by state statute, not by the village.
So, so basically, if we hit our quota and we want more, we have to pay this reserve fee?
We don't pay it, the
The
applicant has to pay
applicant
it.
would. Okay.
Correct. And we have several, I don't know the number right off the top of my head, I want to say 8-ish reserve license right now, because like I said, every 500 in population, we gain another license. So with the growth, we have ample license. It just that it is that 10,000 fee versus a 600. That's a one-time fee, so
Mhm.
they pay that once, and then at the renewal, it's the 600 for a liquor
I see.
license.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I just want to, what can you sell with a reserve license?
You can, it's a liquor license, so it would be alcohol, liquor, or beer.
Oh, okay.
So it's not,
It's like buying a seat at the table, right? Like,
Yeah.
out of an
Yeah.
establishment, 10 grand at 600.
but it's a
I get it.
Class B, so it's like your bars, you know, where you're
Right.
serving.
Yep.
Not a take and go.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Cameron, I don't see the old prices. Can you, like directionally, is this like a 10%, 15, 20%?
So in my memo, just because some of these fees hadn't been changed since like 2000 or slightly after that, not all fees increased directly. I would say if you're looking at zoning related or kind of the things in planning and development, between 2 and 3%. The permits was approximately 5%. And then the park rentals was based off of more, being more consistent with other communities, as well as, ensuring that we have the proper funds for maintenance and such.
Other questions from board members?
John, I'll make a motion to approve the permit and fee schedules as written in our packet.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion second then. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Next, then, we move right to reports from village boards, commissions, and committees. Starting off with parks, and we have 2 discuss and considers there. Heidi?
We do, thank you. So we met on Thursday, October 26th, and the first thing that we'll talk about tonight, since we have a guest joining us, is the Shady Grove Park Plan. Blake is, I think I see you on the TV, Blake. Blake and Sean worked with residents in Shady Grove to plan out the pocket park. The developer paid a fee in lieu of parkland dedication when the development started, and then housing units have been paying their park fees. And now that we have a number of units going, it's time to start thinking about the plan. So we don't have an exact schedule of when this would be built, so we're more just discussing that this is the plan for that park developed with residents. So that's what's under consideration, not that we're going to build it immediately. There'll be a lot of other discussions about the funding and timeline for that. So just the park plan. So Sean, unless you have something else, we can turn it over to Blake.
Nope, turn it
Okay,
over to
all
Blake.
right.
I can share my screen though, Blake, unless you're good.
Blake, we can't hear you. You might be double
You guys hear
muted.
me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so I'll share a screen here. Thank you for having me in tonight. You guys see what I'm seeing?
Not yet.
It's coming.
There it is. We got it.
There we go. So just quick context, in the Shady Grove subdivision, the site that we're looking at is the outlot number 2, which is on the south end of the park, right next to the stormwater management basin. So great access from BB, and it's nice and central to the rest of the residential lots. So we did have a chance to work with some of the few residents that are in there now. I think on 2 different occasions, or maybe 3, Sean, you'll have to correct me on my math. But we worked through a couple different conceptual options, listened to what they were really hoping to achieve in the park plan, and this is the result of those iterative discussions. Essentially what we've done is completed the loop pathway, so around the park connecting up with the public sidewalks. We've introduced a landscape feature. We're hoping to highlight some of the large boulders that were uncovered during the earth moving for the subdivision. Some of them are still actually in and around the subdivision, so we'd like to sort of create this boulder garden as an entry piece here in the northwest corner. The rest of the park is comprised of some general open space with a lot of new trees planted throughout, and then of course the sort of the centerpiece of the new playground. And as we talked with residents, and Sean and I sort of brainstormed about how to make this park different than all of your other sites within the village, we decided we were going to try to make it feel as natural as possible, and we explored doing a fully natural playground with wooden structures, not like the wooden structures of the 80s, but more logs and nets and things. But what we really ended up with was trying to bring in this central feature resembling a tree, and then kind of building off of that. And so I've got a quick rendering here of what this is going to look like. So again, this is very, very unique to the village. This is the center tree structure connected with cables and nets, and it's really sort of a physical fitness in disguise, disguise of play. So we've got 2 slide structures, some climbing pieces on the back, but really a great way for not only kids but adults to get a workout and balance on some of these pieces. So we're really excited about it. We think it's going to fit really nice in the park, and again, introduce something totally new to the village park system. We are looking at doing the entire surface in artificial turf, which again is a little bit new for the village parks. That said, we do have some artificial turf in the center islands of the skate park and the pump track that we just did this summer. So if you want to see what that feels like, please head down and check it out. But you know, trying to keep this as green as possible, natural materials. And then we do have a small shade structure. You know, we're looking at 12 by 12 to serve both the open space and the playground. One of the other fun things that we're looking at doing is introducing a double function bench. So if you can see this center spine here, the back of the bench actually flips either way. So we've got them located on the pathway so that you can either sit looking into the park or sit looking towards the pond and observing the wildlife that lives there. So I think that's the highlight of the park layout. We did run an OPC, and all in, you're at about 550,000 for construction, and we've allocated some contingency and some design and engineering costs. So we're a little north of 600 is our estimate for the park at, you know, again, stress concept level development here. So Sean, did I miss any highlights?
Nope.
Or
Nope, you
lowlights?
nailed it.
Nailed it, love it. Any questions on the process or the park concept?
I have one, yeah. First of all, I think this looks awesome, so thank you for putting this together. I'm super excited about this. I wish we could start tomorrow. The artificial turf, is that ADA accessible?
Yes.
Absolutely, yep. In fact, So artificial turf and the poured in place rubber, which you now have at Community Park, are both what we would consider sort of the standard ADA accessible surfacing for playgrounds.
Thank you.
Other questions for Blake?
I'll make a motion that we approve the Shady Grove Park Master Plan as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion second then. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries.
Thanks, Blake.
Thank you all.
All right, then the next item that we have to consider tonight is coming back about the leash dogs in village parks. So if you remember a couple months ago, we discussed that here and sent it over to the Parks Committee to discuss and sent their recommendation. So after discussion at a couple meetings and talking with Chief Gary, the Parks Committee recommended 10-foot leashed dogs within 10 feet of the paths. So that's the kind of the consensus that we built around based on those factors, with prepared fields and ability to enforce kind of gray areas. So it's kind of the straightforward recommendation from the committee. Sean, I don't know if you want to add on to that, or Chief Gary, on kind of the discussions, how we arrived at that.
Chief, go ahead.
So the reason brought the 10-foot leash from path, again, is sort of to avoid public confusion about when is a dog allowed in the park, when is a dog allowed to utilize the park, and still being within the owner's control, especially when you look at, I'll use Bakken Park as an example, the soccer fields. When is a soccer field in use? Is it in use when one person's out there utilizing it? Does it have to be an organized event? It's 10 people out playing on the field. Again, from a law enforcement perspective, one of the concerns that was brought up previously was there was no enforcement being done, so why do we have this on the books? Again, if we're gonna put an ordinance in place, there's going to be enforcement action in the future. I'm a dog lover, but again, there has to be guidelines that we're not confusing the public on, and making it's okay this time, but it's not okay that time. Because then you're sending mixed messages and you're making it very difficult to enforce any of the rules.
So I think the committee was definitely strongly against the dogs at playgrounds, and so that wasn't ever like discussed as an option. It was more about fields and use in fields. So that's kind of what most of the conversation went around. I think the committee generally was supportive of the 10-foot in the paths through the parks. So that was how we determined our recommendation. And Sean, if you have anything to add.
And I think part of it too was the, excuse me, upcoming dog park that we're, that will obviously be off leash in that area. From our standpoint, I too am a dog lover. I got two big old German Shepherd babies, and I'd go any direction as long as Chief is comfortable with enforcing it. And I looked at several other ordinances out there. Monona's is very extensive. They talk specifically about different locations where pets are not allowed, dogs are not allowed. So, yeah, just something that we can enforce. And obviously included with this is changing signage that we have right now. So we would need to update that. And there's a little bit of a cost to that as well.
Under the guise of not confusing the public, What would stop us from being more prescriptive and saying what something is, right? Like, so we're not confused about what's in use and what is not in use. Why couldn't we say, this is what in use means, this is what not in use means? I think 10 feet's a little heavy-handed. For me, I have a couple dogs, I love dogs too, and I kinda wanna be able to walk them out in the grass. Even, like if I look in Community Park, there's a huge grass area outside the field that you can walk around in, not within 10 feet of a path, that I could no longer legally do in the village. Well, I couldn't do it today,
I was gonna say, you can't do it today.
but legally. But also, I would like to be able to if I chose to do that. I just think if we could describe, because nobody's going to the park looking at this ordinance being confused. They're waiting for somebody to enforce it on them and tell them, this is the ordinance. So if we just say what that is, we describe what that is, why can we not make it clear within the ordinance what in use is and not in use is? Even if it's 0 people means not in use, 1 person means in use, you can enforce that.
You'd probably have to specify, like, because it's, in use isn't gonna include people who are also out there with their dogs. Like, there could be more than 2 dogs out there.
I
would imagine.
Obvious, but yeah. That's all.
So unfortunately, I didn't make the August 21st meeting, but I guess Mark and Sean, help me understand the crux of the argument. I want to say this, you tell me if it is or is not the crux of the argument. Is it the enforcement of pet waste? Is that the biggest concern here, or are there, I'm just trying to understand what are the big rocks in the conversation here, from your perspective?
Excuse me, from our perspective, it's just more about pet waste on athletic fields. Just making sure that that's not a problem. We don't, I mean, we mow it, but we're not out and looking for it, and currently we don't really have to, because they're not allowed in parks. So from our standpoint, yes, I would like, if it goes a different direction than what the committee suggested, then I would just like that spelled out a little bit better in our ordinances. Like, as if you took a look at Monona's, they did a really nice job of really saying which areas pets were not allowed in. And so what if we talked about our athletic fields and specifically talked about Bakken Park or a baseball field, I think that would help.
Can I just want to add on a little historical perspective too, because the committee talked about this a couple of years ago, and the committee was pretty strong at that time about not changing the ordinance. We talked more at that time about people that are afraid of dogs then would feel uncomfortable using the parks, and that was the central kind of deciding factor at that time. You know, the parks, there are people, there are a lot of dog lovers, but there are people that are afraid of dogs that may not utilize a portion of the park because a dog is there. So that was the central argument at that time. I don't think that has gone away in the general population. So that may have played into kind of the more conservative approach also.
Sorry. If either of you wanted to respond to that.
And again, from my perspective, from the law enforcement perspective, whatever guidance you wish to put into place, it's fine with me. I'll have my officers doing what you want. But again, when you're talking about the general public, again, 1 kid out in the field playing, is that in use or is that not in use? I.e., can the dogs be out there or can't they be out there? And that's where you start running into that confusion. And all I'm trying to alleviate is creating that confusion. So again, whatever guidance you give me, that's the way we'll take the action on it.
I mean, I guess I'll give you my take. So my wife and I went to McCarthy Park last night, and I think I probably saw 40 dogs at McCarthy Park, all on leash, right, as they're supposed to. But even my own wife asked me, she's like, why can't we have dogs in the village, but I can go, you know, just a few feet away from the village and I can have a dog in a park? And I was like, you know, it's a fair question. I don't know. Like, and it just so happened that Chris had brought this up, today. So I was like, and again, kind of coming in here, bottom of the sixth inning here. I feel like, to Vince's point, I mean, there are a lot of examples I think we can pull from that are extreme, in my opinion, extremely descriptive, like Monona and Sun Prairie. I just, for me, I appreciate the committee's work, but I think like 10 feet within a path still feels awfully restrictive. And I think the spirit of it is like, if I have a dog on a leash, I should be able to take that dog somewhere, as long as I, one, clean up after it, and two, I'm not inhibiting any sports that are going on, or any, like, I'm not a nuisance, right, in terms of causing problems. To me, it sounds like if we just gave you more language, put more specifics, that would, I think we'd be able to find the compromise here somehow.
If I could, if I could add a for instance to this, our fall flag football program currently is run at North Lawn, and it's one of the fields are in an area that is not considered an athletic field, and it backs up to the houses on Clover. A lot of those houses on Clover don't have fenced yards, and folks were bringing their pets to games, and the folks that live there were not able to take their dogs outside during the flag football events that were going on. So I received a phone call from a very nice person that just asked, no dogs in the park, right? Yep, and we sent a message out to all of our flag football folks, and as well as just instructed staff to make sure that people didn't bring dogs in there. That's an example of an area that's not quote unquote an athletic field. It's just something that we have to use. And so whatever language we choose, whether it's designated athletic field for, a certain amount of time, we just have to be careful with that. Because those folks, and for whatever it's worth, we're planning on moving our flag football down to Bakken, which would be less restrictive. But those folks that live on Clover are in a more difficult situation.
I know, Chris, just one more point.
Go ahead.
I mean, Sun Prairie did a pilot. I mean, was a pilot ever discussed, or a POC?
No.
We did talk a little bit about a pilot and a test the last time we talked about this, but not this time.
Sun Prairie did just actually end their pilot, and they decided to go permanent with the leash dogs throughout parks. They said of all the complaints they got throughout the whole pilot, like 90% of them were about unleashed dogs, so it didn't really count.
How did it impact the folks on Clover with their dogs? I'm just interested in knowing more. What was the problem?
They couldn't take their dogs outside. Their dogs were barking at the dogs that were in the park, which,
They couldn't let their dogs out without a leash, or they just couldn't let them out with a leash? I guess I'm curious.
As I understood it, they couldn't take them out into their backyards with a leash because there was other dogs in that area.
Oh, okay.
That's how I understood it.
The Monona code that you were talking about, and it is more prescriptive, you said. Does that differentiate between you can have your dogs on fields as long as there's nobody there, or is it just define athletic fields?
It defines specific athletic fields as I read it, mostly like things at Ahuska that are considered athletic fields or on courts. That's how I read it.
Okay.
Quick question. So if we were to approve it that the dogs leashed in the park, they would then, for example, in your example, pretend that was an actual park, folks could bring their dog to the flag football field to watch, or baseball field, or as long as they're on a leash.
Correct.
Unless we say otherwise in the specifics. So like Monona's example, you can't, leashed pets are not allowed within 20 feet of an athletic field or court. So ultimately we can say, is it okay for, I'm gonna use your example, right? Like is it okay to bring a dog to an athletic field or not? Because there's an athletic event going on. I mean, to Sean's point, this is a super gray area, and we need to be really prescriptive if this is the direction we want to go. Correct, or?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
I did get an email from a village resident who was not in favor of the 10-foot thing and wanted to be able to take their pets into fields because it sounded like mostly because they wanted to be able to take their dogs to watch their grandkids' soccer games, sit on the sideline with the dogs and watch the games. One other thing, like if we do within 20 foot of athletic fields, wall and play or whatever, would we need like an exemption if a path is within 20 feet?
I mean,
I don't know.
I mean, if we're gonna go this route, if we're gonna pick out, to your point, Chris, if we're gonna pick option 4, like, ultimately, we're kind of rewriting the rules, and I don't know if we necessarily wanna do that tonight, but, I think that, and when I say option 4, I'm going back to your original memo back in August, like, I don't know, I just feel like option 4, 10 feet within 10 feet of a path, it just feels like we tried, but it just kind of gave up. Like, it just doesn't, it's nice, but it's not, it's still pretty restrictive.
Yeah, I think it would still make us, I think, the most restrictive
Right, for sure.
municipality.
I think I've always appreciated Madison's approach. Like, there are certain parks you can and certain parks you can't go to. Like, I don't think you can get more prescriptive than that, right? And there's like specific areas where you're allowed to have a leashed pet. Like, and I always, again, my own opinion, I feel like that's probably a good place to start if there's concerns here. So you take 2 or 3 parks and we could do a pilot, or we could just say, hey, these are the 3 parks where you can bring a pet, and do it for a period of time. Larry, I'm curious, like, what are you seeing other municipalities do in this regard?
Well, I think you've identified that the village of Cottage Grove is more restrictive than most, and you also are correct in that however you do it is however you do it. I mean, you got to take into account what you think is important, and I think that a very common dog use in the parks is what you mentioned, or what Chris mentioned, with people wanting to be there with watching athletic events. And so then what is the athletic field, and what's the boundary of the athletic field, and all of that. If you want to have if you want to do something other than just prohibiting, you got to be pretty specific on how you do it. But everybody does it a little bit differently.
Does the board want us to kick this back to the committee to consider something a little bit broader than the 10 foot?
I think we can do that, but I think it would help to get language first so that we can see what it's at, and then maybe they could modify it a little bit if they needed to. I think part of the reason they went on option 4 instead of option 3 is because I think originally we were expecting language to go to the Parks Department, and then never did. So I think if we got some language first, so that way we actually had an ordinance change in front of them to say yes or no to, or modify, I think that would be a little more helpful. But also, I don't want this to keep dragging out,
Chris, would you say, if you had to, and again, I'm going back to your memo, if you had to pick 1 or 2 that, from your opinion, kind of match what the spirit of what we're trying to do here, what would you say those ordinances are?
1 or 2 of the ordinances in the original memo? I would have to pull that up, I'm sorry.
Only reason I'm asking is just trying to, in the spirit of trying to drum up language,
Yeah.
right? Like, which one would work best?
I think, as I'm reading through this very quickly again, Monona's or Sun Prairie's new ordinance would probably be the 2 closest from what I've heard.
How do you feel about the Madison approach of some parks are okay and some aren't?
I mean, I think it's fine. I think you're going to get people who are close to a park that's not in the parks we choose that are going to get angry that they can't take their dogs right down the street. Of course, they can't do that now anyway. But
I mean, they can't do it anyways, right? So
But again, I think
Yeah.
you're probably going to get people doing it regardless. So kind of, again, what's the point of
Right.
restricting it?
And as far as pet waste, I got plenty of pet waste in my yard from people who aren't supposed to put it there, so like pet waste happens, right? So I get it's tough to enforce, but it's still happening anyways, right?
And I guess I struggle with going the Madison route of like, what parks do you say no to? I can't think of a reason to say no to 1, 2, 3 specific parks and allow them. I mean, probably the biggest one that you could say no to would be Bakken, because it's a lot of athletic field there, but we also have a lot of path.
Right.
And I would really struggle with saying no to Bakken Park for that reason. So me personally, I would rather that we just kind of picked and choose what we were gonna do, whether we identify, and we can certainly do this. I can get this prepared and take it back to committee. We're meeting December 7th, and just kind of go through specific areas that I would feel I would rather not have pets on in each park, and we can go that route if you guys are comfortable with that.
Can you talk, maybe like have a chat with the village attorney, and then they can turn that into potential code change and then go to Parks to,
Is
Parks
that what
Committee?
you'd like to do, is
That's
go
what I would
with
like to
a
do.
code change first, or have the committee chime in on areas of parks that we would not want pets on?
yeah, I guess I would prefer model language, and then you guys can go through it and
Okay.
change it a bit if you need to.
John, you feel like you have enough direction based on this conversation for
I think
us
so,
to do
yeah.
that?
I think so,
Okay.
yes.
Thanks, Larry. All right, so I think what I'm hearing is we're tabling this and having the Parks Committee do a little more work on it based on the feedback from,
I'll work with Chief as well.
Yeah.
And just make sure that everybody's comfortable with the direction we're going, and then I'll get something to legal.
yeah, we definitely, whatever it is, it's gotta be enforceable. And right now, we've got the Wild Wild West, because nobody knows anything.
Do we need, we're okay, just,
Larry, do we need a formal motion on the table? No, just, we're not taking action.
okay.
All right.
Then we did talk about a couple other items at committee meeting. Kevin Laufenberg, who's on the committee, is the new Fireman's Festival chairperson, so he went through kind of the preliminary plans for the Fireman's Festival with major focus on the parking, because our fields, our new courts, and parking lot, that used to be the parking for the festival, so they would park, did they say 600 cars in that area? So we're now looking for a new spot to park 600 cars, and we don't have a lot of unused park space at Bakken Park any longer, so we're trying to stay off of the prepared fields, especially if there's rain, or even if there's not, when you have kind of a driveway path coming in and out on top of our fields that can lead to damage, and then it can lead to injuries of players on the fields, ground in repair for a long time, and inability to use the field. So we're trying to work out some alternative ideas on where we might be able to park as many people that come to the festival, and we all want to make sure that we find a spot so the festival continues to be successful and people can access it easily, which is not easy, because it's not that easy to get to Bakken Park from other spots because of the railroad tracks. So we're kind of talking about some alternatives, and we're going to come back and talk about it some more at the December meeting.
Yep, that's perfect.
All right. Then we also talked about the Community Foundation is talking about donating the cost to have a concrete bag toss game near the Fireman's Park shelter. So we're looking at other options for other parks to maybe put this at, perhaps Houston, just kind of looking at those options. But it does look like a cool feature that we could add. We also talked about smoking and vaping in village parks, and we actually already have an ordinance on the books that bans smoking and vaping in our parks. And we might need to add to signage when we do the dogs in parks updated signage, then we can add that to it as well. I think that captures everything, unless I missed something, Sean?
You got it.
All right, so because our meeting is scheduled for Thanksgiving, we're going to meet in between the November and December, so we'll meet then on the 7th.
I have a question, if I may.
Sure.
The carnival workers usually used to park all their trailers and stuff there. Do you know where they're gonna go? And also, sorry, is the parking lot gonna be open to the courts, or is that gonna be used for other things?
For the festival time?
Yeah.
So we set up the parking lot to be able to handle the carnival trailers plugging in. So there's a new power board right next to the tennis courts that they can plug in and power those. We don't know if Grove Street is going to be open or if the parking lot will be open. So we set it up hoping that that would be a suitable location for the campers to go. But with talk from Kevin, there's talk of a possible pickleball tournament, a car show, all those things to me say that Grove Street has to be open, and so then the courts would be open.
Okay.
But that hasn't been decided yet.
Okay.
Kevin did talk about all the first responders that are on site for the weekend, park close to where they need to be, so that was one other thing with the parking, like nearby parking, they do reserve, so if there's an emergency, then they can quickly get back to the firehouse and emergency services station.
Correct.
But I don't believe that's in that lot, but, pickleball tournament, yeah, will be something new this year, so.
All right, anything else on parks?
Nope, that's all.
All right, thank you, Heidi. Next then, Police Commission. I don't know, Chief, you want to take that, or Matt's not here?
So, Police Commission met on October 18th, reviewed May 10th minutes, and approved them. Then I provided them with an update related to the K-9 program, the status of the officer and training, the SRO program. Officer Hegland is in her 7th year as the SRO up at the school, so that's being evaluated for a transition. We got an internal candidate that is interested and have to meet with the school district, make sure they're comfortable with it. Updated them on the current officer hiring process. We have 3 candidates that will be going to the Police Commission next Thursday for review, and then discuss the current sergeant's promotional process and their desire to step out of the association for the furtherment in their career development. Next topic discussed, I had requested an extension related to the residency requirement. I was granted an extension until May. So again, in the current housing market, it's a little on the hard side. And then we set the next meeting, Police Commission's meeting, as I stated, on next Thursday on the 9th, and then again on the 15th related to hiring and promotional process.
Any questions for Chief? All right, thanks, Chief. Next then, Library Board, so this is David, and then Cindy also asked to chime in as well, so.
Yeah, I wasn't there. Go ahead, Cindy.
Yeah, David was on vacation in October.
Okay.
So we met Wednesday, October 18th, and we had a few things that we discussed. So we did our annual election of officers, and they'll remain the same for the next, for the rest of the year, and then for 2024. We discussed options for better maintaining and monitoring of the village's free little library. So it was brought to our attention by a resident that there were several that were in need of significant repair and replacement. We contacted Parks and the Optimist Club that owns 2 of them, or put 2 of them up, and we are going to work with the Madison Reading Project to replace both Willow Run and the Bakken Park free little libraries. And if anyone knows of any other ones that are in need of maintenance. We are kind of working on a system for how we're gonna maintain those. I think there was about 25 of them right now in the village. We reviewed our library board mission vision statements, and so we edited some of that, and then we also talked about the need for a DEI A-B, so a diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and belonging and community statements, which I have drafts of all 3 of those statements, and I'd love feedback if you're interested in giving that. We're gonna bring that back for discussion in December. Tracy delivered her programming report. We're about, as of, I think there's a program going on right now, but we're about 2,800 attendees at 55 events to date. Some of our highlights that are coming up, well, we just had our all-community read with Maggie Ginsberg and Laura Bird. She announced that she had won her best literary book for 2023 from the Wisconsin Literary Association, and so that was a big deal for us to have that in Cottage Grove and get to do that announcement. We have some pop-up maker spaces, and we're working with the Chamber of Commerce for a holiday book drive coming up, so also working in the park space. Otherwise, we just did our reports, and kind of the one big thing I want to highlight is that Tracy did resign as president of the Friends of the Cottage Grove Library. She did in August. That didn't take effect until like September, and then there's been kind of a whole reorganizing of the executive committee, and they have a whole bunch of new people, so they're kind of reorganizing themselves. And our next meeting is Wednesday, December 20th.
Any questions for Cindy? All right, thanks, Cindy. All right, next time we have Deer Grove EMS. I'll take a swing at this, and then Brittany, you can chime in as well. We met on October 19th. The usual items regarding the financials, the bills, budgets, approvals, write-offs, et cetera. No write-offs, of course. Chief went through his staff report, again, walking through the metrics and everything. And then I got into the discussion about the Deer Grove EMS intergovernment agreement, and looking at that, looking at some items that the village, this village board had suggested, as well as staff to consider. So the committee or the commission's working through those now. Chief was kind enough to put them into the actual agreement, but they're by no means in that state yet. There's still certainly some discussion the commission needs to have on that. There was a question about Act 12. If we go to the different funding formula by some of the smaller communities. So that still needs to be sorted out, and I think it sounds like there still isn't information enough from the state government yet on how they're going to work that formula out, as well as talking briefly to Larry that it really is about the entity of Deer Grove EMS. Are we continuing to, move that forward and make investments in that to avoid the 15% clawback? So updated the Deer Grove EMS budget. Again, I think our portion is about just shy of a 15% increase. Again, that's 2 additional paramedics, as well as a replacement ambulance. Those are the big tickets in there. Shout out to Cameron for helping with that as well, with commission. With that, Brittany, anything else?
No, we covered it all.
Okay. Any questions? All right, then we'll move to the Fire District Commission. David or Vince or?
Yeah, evening. First, I'd like to welcome David back from his 21st Disney cruise, and he came just in time for the fire meeting. I think it's dedication. So we had our meeting on the 23rd of October for 12 minutes, and there were no public appearances. The chief reported there was 46 members, 265 calls year to date. All the annual maintenance was completed the week prior to the meeting, and there's a couple of items to fix still. The department received their first battery-operated chainsaw and some other equipment from a 50/50 DNR grant. One structure was burned down for training, and an additional training was scheduled for, I guess it would be last week. And also the Pleasant Springs agreement was completed by all parties. There was a discuss and consider around the security system for emergency services building. David explained to the chief that he should be the primary point of contact, given this is a maintenance system. Additionally, we communicated that the village's budgetary amounts were, there was a question around equalized value upon the year of 2022 versus the delivery year. David was going to go back to camera and discuss, so we ended up tabling until the village and town are done with our budget meetings. The next meeting will be on the 27th of November, and that was the end of the meeting.
All right, any questions for Vince? All right, thanks, Vince. Next, then, we have Law Enforcement Committee. We met on October 24th. Chris and Chief keep me right here on this. I'll give, again, a stab at this, and then we can chime in. As Chief mentioned earlier about meeting with the commission, Police Commission, there are 3 candidates, so they're going through the process right now for filling some spots within the force, and so that's progressing along. There were no data that was calling out in regards to looking at all the service calls and other pieces of and metrics that we review, so nothing stood out in those. Again, detectives report, again, you know, we had to refer 2 cases to DCI because of jurisdiction. Otherwise, detectives keeping busy, as well as the SRO. And then I think that was pretty much it. As a side note, there are 2 new flashing stop signs at the corner of BB and Oak and Southern Grange. I already had 2 residents say thank you that raised that concern. So thanks to staff as well as folks out there putting those in. They are blinking brightly that I've seen so far. So with that, it was a pretty quick, short meeting. Anything to add, Chief? Chris?
No.
Okay. Next, then, we have emergency preparedness. Is Lieutenant here? He is not. All right. Fairly short meeting. We met on October 25th. Discussed participating in the Dane County Management Agreement around and natural hazard plan. There was a representative from the county there covering some of those items. Talked about the 2024 budget. Main investments there are the to-go bags the chief and lieutenant have been working on, and they are in our proposed budget. And we're talking about doing a roundtable discussion for the spring. And then also Chief Archibald said that the fire department staff are going through hazard material capability, all staff. So they have some trained already, more getting trained, and with the goal of everyone. So those were items there covered that I jotted down. Chief, anything you remember that I missed?
Nope, you covered it all.
Okay. Next, then, we have reports from village officers. Rick, anything? Sorry, Larry. I wrote Rick because he's usually here, Larry, so how's that? And then I had /Larry, but Rick was the first name on there. You can do it either way. I'm prepared. All right. I think you're funnier than Rick. How's that? Don't tell him that. So next on Finance Director, we have an item there. Cameron?
So certainly, I believe you're referring to the community portal.
Yes.
Really happy to finally report that we've worked through all the bugs and ready to implement the system to the public. So in a couple of weeks, we'll be sending out a letter to residents informing them that we are switching our utility billing payment software from PSN to Community Portal. Kind of as previously discussed, that eliminates the $300 maximum payment that you can make. So there's actually right now not a limit on the new system. More importantly, it's more of a live system. So within 10 to 15 seconds of making changes in our accounting system, examples, applying late fees, that's accessible for the public. So immediately, if somebody from the public logs in, they can know exactly what their balance is at that time, instead of having to wait until overnight. While that doesn't seem like a big deal, it comes up more than you think. Residents unhappy that, they went in to pay the bill, the next day they go in and notice that there's a couple dollars left over on their account. A huge thanks to our utility clerk, Kristen Kraus, and Sarah, our accounting assistants, for their patience in testing it. So we will plan on doing a soft close for the first couple of months of PSN, but then a hard close probably around March of 2024 and close PSN for good. So very excited. It's going to be a great product for the community.
All right, thanks, Cameron. Inga, you have an update too.
I do. So over the last few months, staff has been reviewing options available for general liability, workers' compensation, auto physical damage, and a few other insurance coverages, both through the League of Wisconsin Municipalities Mutual Insurance and Cities and Villages Mutual Insurance Company, or CIVMIC. The village is currently covered through the League of Insurance as well. Staff is in the process of obtaining an official 2024 renewal quote from the League, and we have a proposal from CIVMIC for 2024 coverage. We plan to bring a recommendation to the board on November 20th. If the village board does decide to switch insurance providers, we wanted to let you know that the notice requirement for cancellation of the League coverage was met last week. Through the due diligence process, staff and legal counsel saw that notice of cancellation of coverage for the League insurance required a 60-day notice prior to the expiration of the policy. So staff worked with the village's attorney, Rick, and received approval from President Williams to send the notice to the League with language that the village board will make a final decision in November. So that's where that stands right now. And this isn't an item, but I just wanted to acknowledge that this is our Director of Public Works and Utilities last village board meeting, so wanted to thank him for his service to the village as well.
Look at Brian's even blushing. I love it. Thanks, Inga. Good job. With that, then, communication, business. First up there is looking at the vouchers. Any questions, comments, or consideration of approval for the vouchers as presented?
I'll make a motion.
You beat me to it, go ahead.
Barely. To approve the vouchers as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Correspondence, I didn't have any. Chris already mentioned some. Anybody else? All right, upcoming community events. Christmas in the Grove is just around the corner, which is really frightening because that means usually cold and snow, especially after today. Any other announcement of community events? Okay. Next then, future agenda items. Anything, Matt, that we have to, we're going to cover in this budget?
Yes, we have the budget workshop, which is a separate meeting, but that's on Monday at 5:30. Staff is going to be, or is working with the fire department, putting together a proclamation regarding firefighter Gavin Wendricks. And our thought is to, through the fire department, reached out to their family and identified a date of importance to them, which is April 5th, which is the date that he joined the fire department. And so we'll put a proclamation together that would name that day in his honor. And we'll have that at the next board meeting, and then maybe a presentation closer to that date with the family whenever they're ready.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. All right, then I'll start this off. Got a little bit of work to do here. I'd like to make a motion to go into closed session. This is a closed session regarding potential land acquisition in TID number 9 and establishing the negotiation position. The Village of Cottage Grove Board will enter a closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.85, parentheses 1, parentheses E, deliberating, negotiating, purchasing public properties, investing in public funds, or conducting other public business wherever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Brittany. This will be a roll call.
Stoa,
Yes.
Peterson,
Aye.
Murphy,
Aye.
Ballwig,
Aye.
Valencia,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
and Whittick.
Next, then, I'd like to make a motion that the village goes into closed session in regards to the police union negotiation. The Village of Cottage Grove Board will enter a closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.85, parentheses 1, parentheses E, deliberating and negotiating, purchasing public properties, investing in public funds, conducting other specified public business wherever bargaining or reasons require a closed session. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion second, then. We'll do another roll call.
Williams,
Aye.
Ballwig,
Aye.
Murphy,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
Stoa,
Yes.
Valencia,
Aye.
and Whittick.
13.
I would like to make a motion to approve the ratification of the collective bargaining agreement between the Village of Cottage Grove and Wisconsin Professional Police Association Law Enforcement Employee Relations, knowing that there will be some modification of language that is immaterial for approval.
Second.
We have a motion second, then. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Item 14,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
non-debatable. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Everybody have a good week.